You're listening to the Show We Go Baseball podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 56 of To the Show We Go. We have Ed Hand and myself, Andrew Parker. Today's episode, it is one of the newest members of the Red Sox organization. It is the Justin Slaten episode. Now, if you don't know Justin, he just came over actually in a trade on Rule 5 day, which was quite interesting. And I'm definitely going to ask you about that as we get into the show. But you came over, you were with the Rangers, got selected by the Mets, and then traded to the Red Sox. So quite three different hats in one day. So I am going to ask you about that a little bit later. But before we kind of jump in, and I know Ed's got a lot of stuff he wants to ask as well, but I do want to get started. You just were at Fenway Park for rookie development. You were also at Winter Weekend for out in Springfield, seeing a lot of the fans and all the teammates that you're going to have. So I want to start it off. I guess, how was Fenway Park and getting around some of the younger guys? And then how was Winter Weekend in Springfield?
Yeah, so it was great. I got up there for the first time, was actually able to meet some now new teammates. And so just to kind of be around the atmosphere of like, all right, like we've got some stuff going on. It's, we're getting to meet people, we're working out, we're doing, community outings. It was a really good opportunity. I feel like not just for myself, but like everyone there, just to kind of get familiarized. I was not the only one who was new to the organization that had been there. I was with Richard Fitz and Isaiah Campbell. And so just to kind of be able to meet them and then kind of see just like what the Red Sox were about and kind of start feeling it out, get to meet, some people in the front office, some people in the big league staff, the minor league staff. It was honestly just like an incredible experience. And then obviously like throwing on top that we're getting to do a lot of it at Fenway. It was really cool.
And then I do want to ask as well, I know we talked a little bit off air. It took you, you were at Fenway for the week, and then it took you right into Springfield and Winter Weekend. What was that like, I guess, just being around, Red Sox fans for the first time and getting to know more of your teammates as well?
Like I said, yeah, I mean, going off the week, it was nice. We were able to like just kind of roll right into that. Getting there the first night and like walking out, in front of all of the fans, getting your name called out. It was a pretty cool moment just to kind of get to stand up there, even though it was brief. It was really cool just to kind of like, see a little bit of the support system that's there and, couldn't have been more thankful for the people that showed up and spent their time to come and support us. And then going back to the hotel, it was really cool to just see like the people that were there, like when we would be kind of walking through. And being new, luckily I didn't have to get as stopped as much as some other people surely did. But even the few fans that did kind of recognize me and knew who I were to come up to me and ask for autographs and just kind of, take their time to be there. It was awesome. I mean, I couldn't have been, more happy to be there. Couldn't be more happy to be a part of the organization. And this is my first time doing something like that. And so to be able to spend the week with the minor league guys in the front office, and then it was pretty much all work, really long days. And then we get to go to the weekend and then have some fun with each other. It was really cool.
How have you found the Red Sox organization differs from the Rangers organization so far?
Good question. It's still really early for me, but I would say like just right off of the rip, it seems like it is an organization that carries a ton of pride. It's been pretty evident just hearing to the people talk about how they expect to win and all of the things that kind of go into that. It's been nice. I mean, like it's really cool coming to a city where it's like sports just in general are very I would say like it's almost like it's put on a pedestal. Winning is put on a pedestal, and in a city that expects a lot from their teams. Not saying that Texas didn't, but when you just look at Boston as a whole, you got the Bruins, the Patriots, the Celtics, and the Red Sox, all teams who like historically have had a ton of success. I would say that that's something different coming to a city where it's like every sport that's involved, the entire city is behind them, and just like really being able to feel that just kind of throughout the week there, everywhere we went, it's something with Boston sports teams, every restaurant, every, store that we went into, all of the places that we went to. It was honestly like really, really cool. And to just be like going from Texas, like my home state, whereas like Arlington is not like a real big city. It's obviously like in the metroplex. And then you go to a place like Boston where it's like, it feels really, really big, and then it's like you're just right there, and you can just tell that it's special, and it means like a little bit more to the city.
Now, you just came from an organization that came off a World Series win in its own. I know obviously you weren't, you didn't play in the majors this past year, but what was it like playing in an organization that was making that run?
It honestly was super cool. I mean, and it was something like being a part of like the spring training talks. I wasn't in major league spring training, but even in the minor league spring training, just hearing the way that people talked about it with Bruce Bochy coming in and getting his staff, the way that they kind of talked about it was, it always seemed like for them it was in a sense, it was like it's World Series or bust, and not like they're putting the pressure on us like we have to go win the World Series. It almost just seemed it was like that's what they expected. And so as the year got going, obviously, like you have DeGrom coming in and there's huge expectations, and then he suffers truly like a really unfortunate injury, and then you kind of lose some guys along the way, and then other guys pick up, and it was like all throughout the year, like I got to play with Grant Anderson this year, who made his debut out of the bullpen. One of my really good friends, Evan Carter, gets pulled up from AA, spends like a week and a half in AAA, 2 weeks in AAA, and then goes on and is on the World Series roster. It was like getting to see these people that you've played with now for the past couple of years get called up in the middle of the season and then contribute down the stretch. And then like that's something that's just like, it makes you proud, because it's like, man, like you're watching the TV and it's like, man, I get to play with this guy. Like I know this guy really well. And it's like, you see all the people that are behind the team at this point. It was something that was like pretty surreal in the moment. And it was just kind of like going into the first round of the playoffs. It's like, man, we got to go to Tampa Bay. And it's like, boom, they win a couple there, and they go to Baltimore, take care of business there. And now it's like, I was in Arizona at the time for the fall league, and it's like we're watching them play the Astros. And then honestly, we were like praying. We were like, oh my gosh, like we really hope that the Diamondbacks win, so that way they get to come to Arizona and maybe we can go to a game. And so the whole entire run they were making, it was like we would have guys in Arizona. We would come over to the house we were staying at. We'd cook dinner and watch all of the games. And it was just like, man, you could feel it. Like even just like, the 6 or 7 minor leaguers that we had watching there, it was like just so exciting. And then fortunately they do come to Arizona. We were able to get tickets like right off the rip. They were like, we should get tickets. What game do we want to go to? And I was like, I say we go to game 5. And they were like, game 5? And I was like, yeah, that seems like the one. I was like, it's going to be the last game in Arizona. I was like, they probably won't sweep. I feel like that'll be the last game in Arizona. And I think that, it could be to where it works out for them in 5. So we ended up getting the tickets, or we were going to get tickets. And then we ended up having to pay like a ton of money for them. And so we are like, gosh, I really don't. Like, it's all right. We'll just watch it at the house. I don't really want to shell out $1,000 on these seats. And then all of a sudden, like we had the same guy, Grant Anderson guy. He texted me and one of my friends, and he was like, y'all aren't missing this game. Like, I'm buying the tickets for y'all. So like, come on. So we were like, no way. He buys the tickets for us. Game 5, we show up, get to watch them win the World Series. And it was like as a fan growing up, watching the Rangers play like in 2011, 2010, it was like every single pitch, like you're like living and dying with watching it on the TV. And it was like being there at the game. It almost felt surreal, where it was like when they won, I don't think any of the guys in the section, I don't even think we like cheered or said anything. We just kind of like looked at each other with like huge smiles on our face, and we're just like hugging, and we're like almost having like our own little celebration, because it just felt like almost like an out of body experience, getting to watch all of these guys that I played with run out onto the field. It was incredible.
So you grew up a Rangers fan.
I grew up in East Texas, and I grew up going to Rangers games. My entire family that cares about baseball were always Astros fans. But for me, it was a kind of a weird situation where like I lived closer to Dallas, so we would always go to the Rangers games. So like de facto, I rooted for the Rangers because we would always go to those games, and I also rooted for the Astros, which I don't think a lot of Astros or Rangers fans would really want to hear that.
Yeah.
It's like being a
But
Yankees and a Mets fan.
yeah, exactly. It was like, but for me, it was just I was young and I didn't know any better. And honestly, as I started getting like older and getting into high school, I kind of started rooting for the Astros way more than I started rooting for the Rangers. And it was more of it was just because like they were young, they were an exciting team, and they weren't really good at the time. And obviously, like my family really rooted for them, and so I would say I grew up a little bit more of an Astros fans, but I definitely did like pull for the Rangers heavily whenever I was a kid as well.
So how is that for you then, as a local kid who grew up watching the team getting drafted out of the third round by the Rangers?
Mm, yeah, it was a surreal moment because to be quite honest with you, I really never expected that I was going to get picked by the Rangers. It's like you go into the draft for the most part, you kind of have a sense of who likes you and kind of where they like you. And so for me, I kind of had it narrowed down. I was like, man, if I had to put my money on it, like I was gonna go to, like probably it was like 3 or 4 teams where I was like dead set. I'm like, I'm going to one of these teams. And whenever I got the call and they said that I was going to the Rangers, I honestly was like really shocked because I had only talked to one person from the Rangers, and it was like a very brief talk. It wasn't even like a sit down, have like this long drawn out conversation, fill out these questionnaires. I had talked with a scout, an area scout, while I was at school in New Mexico, and that was it. There were no text messages, no phone calls after that. And then like obviously like the second round ended, I started fielding phone calls like right after that. It's like, hey, we're about to get ready to go into day 3 or day 2 tomorrow. And I started getting phone calls from other teams, and it was just like boom. So now it's like the list of that 3 or 4 opened up to like 9 or 10 right there, and none of them were the Rangers. And so it was like when my agent called me the first, he was like, hey, I'll never forget. He called me and he was like, do you want to be a Cardinal? Do you want to be a Cardinal or do you want to play for the Rockies? And I was like thinking about it. And before I could even give an answer, he was like, hold on, I'm getting another phone call. Hangs up, calls me back like a minute later. I answer it and he was like, you're going to the Rangers. And I was like, whoa. And so it was like really quick. And it was like I'm sitting there like I get the phone call, I'm sitting there with my family watching it, and then it pops up. I believe it was the Cincinnati Reds were picking at the time, and the Rangers were next. And I just had like the biggest smile on my face, and my family's sitting there, and they're like, "This is it!" And like the Reds make their pick, and it wasn't me, and they were like, "What the heck?" And I'm like, and then all of a sudden they see the Rangers, and I just remember my mom being like, "Shut up, shut up!" And I'm just like smiling. They say my name, and so it was like they were all screaming because they were like, "No way! Like you're going to Texas, you get to stay home." And it was a very surreal moment for me.
As Astros fans, how did they feel about the Rangers?
I immediately, my granddad texted me and he was just like, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to have to root for the Rangers. And I was like, and I think he even said something along the lines of, he was like, I will root for you guys when you play the Astros, but every other time I'm still going to be an Astros fan. And I was like, that's fine. That's fine. You can do what you want. But I mean, he was obviously joking, but they still are big Astros fans. I mean, even like in the off season, I get to go and spend time with him. I'm really close to my grandparents, and so we got to watch the most recent Astros World Series together, and that was just like a cool moment where it's like I don't really care as much as I probably would if I was in high school or college, but it's still cool to be able to share memories like that with family.
So I want to talk about the other draft that happened that I preluded to earlier, but
yeah.
Well, it had to be a wild day for you. Probably quite a few phone calls, I would assume, and maybe a little bittersweet too that you did leave, your hometown team essentially. But take us through, I guess the Rule 5 and just the craziness that happened after.
Yeah, so I guess it'll all start the day that I didn't get added to the 40-man, and that was a little bit of a sad day as well. It was something that I wouldn't say that I I expected, but it was something that I really wanted to happen. And it was like, I think I speak for most every player. It getting to make your debut with the team that drafted you is something that I think a lot of players aspire to do, because it's like you start off at the very bottom, you work your way up, and then it's almost like a right where it's like, hey man, like here it is, you're homegrown, it's all come to fruition, and it's like now we go. And then the other part of it, and like, yeah, like you said, bittersweet is a very good way to describe it, because I'm now having to, whenever I didn't get added, I'm starting to think about all of the scenarios where it's like, oh my gosh, like I could be playing for another team in another city, and knowing that if I do get selected, it has to be in the big league Rule 5. So it's like a very good moment for my career. And that at that time, I'm like obviously ecstatic. But on the flip side, I'm having to now, say, and I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, if I do get selected, I'm having to tell all of these guys that I grew up, the last 5 years with, and really like became a man with these guys, experienced the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows with. Like I'm having to tell them goodbye, and hoping it's not the last time that we'll share a field together, but knowing in reality it probably is. And so that was something that was really hard at first, where it was like, I'm talking to my family and I'm like, part of me is like, oh, like I really, really want to get selected and I want to go to another team because it's exciting. And then the other part of me is like, but if I do stay, it wouldn't be the worst thing, because I still felt like I was in a really good spot with the Rangers. And they made it really evident to me after I didn't get selected. They were like, look, it's a business. And I'm like, you don't have to explain anything to me. I understand it's a business and you're doing what you feel like is best for the organization. I can't hold any ill will against you guys. It just is something where it's like, I would have loved to have done it here. And so then obviously we get leading up to it. It's kind of a crazy thing where it's like, it's not like the actual MLB draft at all. You don't hear anything. You're not talking to teams, scouts. There's nothing. You're left in the dark. And it wasn't until about 2 days before the draft, I had deleted Twitter, Instagram. I was like, I don't want to see anything. I was getting, some people were tweeting very nice things about me. Some people were tweeting very mean things about me. And I was like, I don't need to hear this, for better or for worse. And so I wasn't thinking about it at all, but I would have teammates and friends who would see stuff that was written about me and they would screenshot it and send it over. And I think when it really got surreal was, I think it was like Baseball America had made a post and it listed me as like one of the top guys going into the Rule 5. And that was kind of like, when I saw that, I was like, now this feels real, because it's like, okay, we're starting, obviously there's people that notice who I am. And so at that point, it started getting to where it was like, all right, like I'm most likely going to be leaving. And so then going into the day of the Rule 5, it was still like the same thing. Like, it's like, man, you know that you're going, but you don't know where it's going to be. And so by that point, like on the day of the Rule 5, I pretty much knew that I was going to be leaving Texas. I just didn't know if it was going to be the first pick to the A's. I didn't know if it was going to be at the very end of it. And I knew that it was going to fall anywhere in between. And so it all, I guess, like where I'm sitting here and I'm listening to it with my dad on the TV, and it was just kind of like pick one goes by, pick two goes by, and I'm sitting there and my name hadn't been called yet. And I was kind of like, I kind of had an idea of like what teams would probably be wanting to take a chance on, like on a minor league relief pitcher. And then whenever the Mets came up, and it was like one of those things where it was like the Mets go to pick, and I kind of like sat back in the chair and I was like, okay. And then they said my name and I was like, I like looked up at the TV and I looked up at my dad and we were just like, whoa, okay. Like we didn't expect that one at all. And so it was like very like, okay, that was a shocker, and obviously very exciting. I immediately got a phone call from the field director, pitching coordinator with the Rangers. They called me and were like, we wish you nothing but the best. Like, thank you for everything that you've done, the past couple of years. Told them thank you as well, wish each other well. And that was that. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, set in stone. At this point in time, my mom, who is off at work, she's calling me. My friends from the Rangers are calling me. And it had been about 3-4 minutes go by. I'm on the phone with one of my friends, and I'm like, okay, hold on. I'm getting a phone call from a New York number. I got to take this. So I answer the phone, and in about 35 seconds, the conversation goes, hello, is this Justin? I say, yes. He says, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm doing really well, obviously. This is a very exciting time for me. He was like, that's good. I'm happy to hear that. He was like, so look, I'm going to try and keep this pretty brief with you. I'm sorry. I know it's going to be a fast turnaround, but we're actually trading you to Boston. And I was like, and I'm standing out on the back porch on the phone. And I was just like, okay. And he was like, yeah, so for all intensive purposes, it's pretty much just like Boston picked you in the Rule 5 draft. Nothing changes about it, but that's it. And I was like, okay, thank you. And he was like, yep, have a good day. And then he 30 seconds, 35 seconds max. And so I walked back inside. My dad had gone into his room at the time. So I'm like, Dad? He's like, yeah. I walk around the corner. I get to his door, and he like pokes his head out of the bathroom. I was like, you're not going to believe this. And he was just like, what happened? And I was like, they just traded me to Boston. And he was like, what? And I was like, yeah. And we kind of looked at each other, and it was like a pretty funny moment where we looked at each other, and he was like, I think I like that a lot better. And I was like, I think I do too. And it was like a area where it was like, I guess the thought of like growing up in the time that I grew up in, it's like Boston sports, like alluding to what I, had talked about earlier. And so it was like, it's not anything against New York per se, but it had everything to do with, it's like Boston, like this is pretty cool. Like a team, like they're the ones that, they wanted me in the draft. They kind of, I guess, thought that I wasn't going to make it for them or to them. I don't know if they had something worked out before that, or if it was simply like the Mets took me and they were like, we want him. And so they made the trade. But either way, it was like, here they are, like, they're making a trade for me on a day like this. And it was just kind of, to me, like, it was super exciting. I was like very, very much on like a high horse for the rest of the day, where I was like, Boston, man, like this is going to be really fun. And so I was super excited after that.
So who from Boston reached out to you, and what did they say when they called?
It was Breslow reached out to me. He called me and was just like, "Hey man, like I'm Craig Breslow. I just want to like welcome you to the organization." Again, it was a super brief phone call. It was just like a welcome. I know it's probably a crazy time for you, but over the next couple of days, like we'll have some people kind of reach out to you. We'll let you, take some time. We don't want to overload you with anything, but we'll let you take your time. And that was that. I mean, we probably talked on the phone for a few minutes, and then after that, started getting some phone calls from a couple other people, but they honestly made it like a really like smooth for me. They didn't try and bombard me with like 30 people calling and texting me in one day. They spread it out over 5 or 6 days. I had people like calling and talking, and it was like, it was awesome. I mean, I couldn't, it's a very hard feeling to describe when that goes down, but it was just from the moment that I found out I was going to Boston up until even now, it just feels almost surreal.
Now, I'm sure you've had a chance to chat with Andrew Bailey. What have been your takeaways? I know it's been very early on since you guys have gotten to chat, but what are your early takeaways from him?
My initial takeaway from him is that he's someone who is very, very passionate about what he does, and I think he has a ton of faith in what I can bring to this organization. And so he was someone who reached out to me pretty quickly, told me, he was like, look, man, we've got a plan for you. We fortunately, fortunately the Red Sox have had a Rule 5 relief pitcher come in Garrett Whitlock, and he's been a great success. And so they felt very, very confident that they knew the right steps to take and kind of how to go about it. And was very, very quick to reassure me that they were going to put me in the best possible spot going into spring training, and just make it to where it's like, hey, like we're going to give you every opportunity to kind of work in and see what it's about. Obviously, it's a very hard jump having to go from AAA with one team, then get traded per se to another team, and then also if you do stay with the team, it's going to be in the big league. So it's a lot of moving around and a lot of new scenarios being thrown at you. And and not only him, but the entire rest of the pitching department has felt the same way. I mean, they've had my back 100% through this entire process. They've displayed, a great amount of confidence in me. And it's something that it feels really, really good because it's like, hey, I know I'm in a very unique situation, but if they feel confident, I feel really confident. And so it's been a really good process so far, like getting to talk to all of those guys, starting to dive into some of their philosophies and stuff that they think can help me, make this jump and make it seem pretty seamless. And so it's been a really good time with them so far.
So this is going back a little bit, but I saw on your Instagram page there was a really nice tribute to your dad as like the first post on it, and I was just wondering what your relationship with your dad has been like and how he's because you were talking a little bit about it before, but how he was he a ball player?
He played baseball growing up, basketball. But he didn't play like past high school. I think, and he'd be the first one to say that his greatest accomplishment was winning his college's ping pong tournament in like the Red Sox back when.
That's an accomplishment.
When he was at Sam Houston State. And so, no, I mean, I can't even begin to describe. It's the relationship that I've had with him. He has pushed me harder than anyone in this entire world, has been harder on me at times than anybody ever has, but has also been the first person to pick me up when I've needed it and in my lowest points. Honestly, to not let me feel bad for myself when things were going really, really bad for me in 2022. I remember having a phone call with him or a text message with him after a really bad outing, and I was feeling pretty down on myself, and, I'm talking to him and I'm like, man, I just can't catch a break right now. And it was like very simple. And he was just like, well, he's like, you got to go back and you got to do it again tomorrow and you got to figure it out. And it was just like, he's right. Like, he's not going to allow me to feel bad for myself, but he does. Like, and on his side, it is like, man, I feel bad for him. I wish I could help him, but he's not going to allow me to kind of get into that state. And I think there were times when I was a kid where, to be honest with you, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a football player and I could care less about baseball at the time. I was just better at football at the time. And I wasn't really a pitcher yet. I didn't start pitching until I was like 11, 12 years old, really was the first year. And so I just didn't care for baseball that much. And there were times where like the work ethic probably wasn't there because it's like I just wanted to play football. I didn't really care to do travel baseball and all that stuff. For me, it was just like I loved being around my friends. And there were times where like other family members, I guess, would be like, hey, like maybe it's just like maybe we just, put the baseball stuff down. And he was like, I really think he's got it. He just doesn't know it yet. And he kept me in it and just pushed me and pushed me and pushed me until I finally realized it for myself when I was old enough. I was like, I really actually do kind of have something going here. And he's been by my side through every bit of it. Watches every single game. He stays up late. He'll be the first one to text me after my best outings, the first one to text me after my worst outings. Him and my granddad are very quick. They will not, they're not going to let me get by with the bad ones. There's no let him sleep on it and get back to him for the most part. It's like, hey, like what's going on or whatever. But I mean, I couldn't be more thankful that he was the way he was on me growing up, because truthfully, I believe like if he didn't, push me in the ways that he did when I was a kid, that I honestly wouldn't be, sitting where I am today.
And was your grandfather at a lot of the games also?
He, when I was a kid, yes, they live, a little bit of ways away from us, still in Texas, but a couple hours away.
It's a big state. It's not like here where you drive 2 hours and you're across the border.
Yeah. No, they actually live relatively close, I would say, for this state. But when I was a kid, they were at a lot of the games. And then even when I was in high school, the most important games like the playoff games, all of that stuff, they would be at. And then even when I went to college 12 hours away at the University of New Mexico, they made it a point to like drive. They would road trip out there twice a year and come and spend. They would try and come whenever we had like a home midweeks and then a home series on the weekend. And they would stay for about like a week at a time. And I mean, yeah, I mean, they were always there. They've always been, big support systems. My granddad, he watches every game, no matter if I pitch or not. Even when I would go back to like my starter days, like some of my family, they were like, well, we'll just watch whenever you pitch. My granddad and my grandma will sit in their living room and watch all 140 something games that we play in a minor season. And he will be the first one to text me whenever something happens on the field. It is like, what's going on with so and so? Oh, this guy, he's having a really good go at it right now. It's like, well, what's going on here? I mean, and he wants to know everything. It's like, I think that he at times is more excited about the season than I am. There will be days where it's the middle of July, it's 110 degrees, and I'm like, the game ends, and I want to get in my car and I want to just drive home and get in bed. And he's just texting me like, "What happened tonight?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I will call you tomorrow. We are not talking about this tonight." And even going back, he has kept a spreadsheet of every outing that I have made going back to high school. He could tell you exactly what I have done. It's just to him, baseball is his like that's his thing. That is his escape. He has a game on his computer. He plays that out of the park baseball game.
Oh gosh, I'm very familiar with Out of the Park. I feel like your grandfather and my dad might be the same person.
I'm telling you right now, he had played it before, but when COVID had hit, he got into it and he was logging hours on this game. And so now it's like I go over to his house and he's like, look what I've done now. And he's got like all of these mods downloaded and he will sit there. That's like to us, that's my favorite time in the off season. It's like that 2-3 week period where it's like, we're not throwing, we're not lifting, give your body a break. I always go and spend a week with them at their house. And it's like, I'll be in the living room talking with my grandmother, watching, sports or whatever. And he's got a table set up in his living room, dual monitors, and he's going back and forth and he will play that game for hours. And he's got it to where like he has every player probably ever that's ever played downloaded. He's got all of these crazy stadiums and he'll just build these teams. It's like he'll try and build like the best home run hitting lineup of all time, but put them in the dead ball era and see what they do and just run like a 162 game simulation. It's insane. That is his pride and joy.
Now, does he have you on any of his teams?
Absolutely. He actually, when I was about to get ready to go into the draft, I'll never forget him. We were talking on the phone and he was like, well, I ran about 6 or 7 simulations just to see where you were falling in the draft, and it looks like you're going to go to the Blue Jays in the 4th round. And I was like, Pablo, come on now, like that's not real life. But I mean, yeah, he would tinker with it too. He'd put me in there and try and like see what I could do, or he's done it all. I can't even begin to go back into some of the scenarios that he's created on that game, but it is like that is his deal.
I didn't know anything about it, so that's this is all new. Out of park baseball is all new to me. So
yeah,
that's
it's about as realistic to running a franchise as you can get. I mean, they have quite literally everything. Like
interesting.
I mean, it is insane how in depth that game is.
Yeah, I grew up playing something similar. It was like a tabletop simulator that my dad and I still to this day are very into. But that's what got me into baseball. It wasn't even so much of the game; it was just that I was playing it with my dad. So anyway,
well, no. I was about to switch lanes here. I didn't. I wasn't too familiar with that. I got to look that up now. So I got to look into that. But I feel like it might put MLB The Show out of business there because franchise mode on there has always had my heart since I was like 10. So
yeah,
it's different.
It is.
I wanted to kind of switch lanes. So you are coming off the best season of your career in professional ball in 2023. What was different last year compared to like 21 and 22? Like what clicked for you?
So there's a couple of things that kind of I feel like went into it. When I went into the 2021 season, I felt like we weren't that far off. I was pitching really like in a vacuum, wasn't pitching bad. At times, I would say that I had some like pretty unfortunate breaks. Like I had one game that comes to mind. I'm through like 5 innings, 10 strikeouts, no runs, throwing really well. And then it's like we go out there for the 6th inning, and it's like infield single, 3-run home run. And it's like, well, there goes like a great outing. Not that that's not like still a good outing, but it was like, there goes that. And I would just have some pretty like kind of unfortunate games where just stuff like the ball just wasn't falling my way. And that was something like I was able to sleep at night knowing that. Obviously it sucks whenever you feel like you just kind of can't catch a break. But for the most part, I felt like I was throwing the ball pretty well. And then you go into 2022. So kind of what went into that was I started off the year as a starter, and I started off throwing pretty well. But there was something like the Rangers were really wanting me to work on 2 things. One of them was throwing a harder slider that they felt like if I could get my slider kind of like in the upper 80s, even like touching like 90-ish, that it was going to help it play a lot better. And so that was like one thing. And then the other thing was like the development of like a 3rd and 4th pitch pretty much. Like I had messed around with the curveball a little bit and messed around with the changeup a little bit. There were pitches I could throw in there, but I wasn't necessarily consistent with it. And so really what it was like we were trying to work on a new slider, and I just couldn't figure it out. Everything that I tried, it wasn't working. I couldn't throw it for a strike, or I'd feel like it was really good, and we look at the TrackMan, and they're like, that sucks. And so it was a whole lot of plug and play. And I think that really got into my head because for weeks and weeks and weeks, I'm trying to work on something that they feel like is going to help make me better. And I can't figure it out. I can't get it to click. I can't get the feeling of it down. And then when I do, I can't be consistent with it. And so then I get moved to the bullpen. And that was something that also kind of hit me where I was like, like, all right, like this sucks. Like I haven't been throwing bad for a while there. I was throwing the best on the team. Well, really like a month into the season, I had like probably some of the better numbers out of all the pitchers on the team. And so then I get moved to the bullpen, and that was something where I had to like really figure out how to make that adjustment because for the past 4 years of my life, I had been a starter. And so then it's like middle of the season, we're going to make this switch. And so for me, it was all about like finding the best way to go about that. And so it was like, while I'm trying to figure out a new pitch, I'm now taking on a new role and things are just kind of changing up a lot. And so then I kind of, by way of trying to throw this new pitch, I had really gotten myself mechanically messed up. And I had gotten to a point where I couldn't throw a fastball for a strike. And so it felt like, to me, I was like, this is as lost as I had ever been on a baseball field. I can't throw an off-speed pitch for a strike. I can't even throw a fastball for a strike. And then you add on top of it, when I do throw the off-speed for a strike, to righties, it was doing okay. To lefties, it was getting absolutely hammered. So I was getting crushed by lefties. And then it's like you mix in where it's like I'm getting to 2-1, 3-1, 2-0 to every batter that I face. It was just a recipe for disaster. And so it went from being like, gosh, like I'm behind. Now I'm trying to nibble because I don't want to get crushed. I'm walking people. And mentally, I was just all in just the wrong place. And I ended up finally, towards the end of the year, one of my teammates in Frisco and one of my best friends, Jack Leiter, he goes and plays in the Futures game. And he comes back from the Futures game, and I'm still in the midst of, like, they're really trying to get me to find this hard slider. And he comes up to me, and he was like, we were catch partners, and he was like, so I was talking to Taj Bradley. This is how he throws his cutter. Why don't you just, like, try this grip? And in catch play, it, like, immediately clicked. I was like, oh, that's nice. And so I kind of figured that out, and it took a couple of weeks to get it to transition to the mound because throwing it in catch play and then getting the feel for it on the mound are a little bit more, especially with quite frankly, like a little bit of a different grip. I'm trying to have to feel something different. And I figured it out like the last 2 weeks of the season. I actually finished the season in 2022 throwing really, really well. I wasn't walking guys. I was throwing harder. I'd figured out this new pitch. And so I went into the offseason on a really, really high note, and I felt really confident about what I was able to do to finish the season. And so going into the offseason, I knew it was I'm now no longer having to worry about making a mechanical change. I'm now more just focused on developing this pitch. So for the first time in 2 years, I was able to go into the offseason not having to worry about, okay, I got to make sure I'm on time and I've got to change my arm path here. I can just focus on like playing catch and finding stuff that works for me. And so I went into to spring training after, working on this cutter this whole time. And I always knew that the slider I had been throwing was still really good. It was still getting outs. And I honestly didn't understand why they even wanted me to change that, because I had been having success. So it was just like a lot mentally, I guess, for me trying to comprehend. And you want to believe that, like, when a coach is telling you something, you want to believe that it is for your benefit. And so what it was for me is like having to have the maturity of being able to think like, I respect what you're saying. And I thank you for like bringing this to my attention, but truthfully, I don't think that's what's best for me. And here's why. And being able to have those conversations with your coaches was like a step that I had to make. And so I go into spring training. I feel really confident about this new pitch. I feel really confident about the headspace I'm in. I know it's like my full year going into being a reliever. I'm going to build off of how I ended the season last year. I go in my first inning of spring training. I'm throwing this. It's now my cutter, and I'm throwing it. And I have a really good first live BP. I come off the field and I'm doing arm care. And the guy who's the AA pitching coach, he comes up to me and he was like, "I'm going to be honest with you, man." He's like, "That might be one of the top pitches in the org now." And I was like, "Really?" And he was like, "Yeah, that thing is really good." And so kind of getting that validation was like, okay, like we figured something out. And so I had a really good spring, and I went into the season and I just kind of continued riding that high that I had been off of. And two, it's easy whenever you've now seen success, a little bit of it, which is something that I hadn't seen in the past 2 years. It was very up and down for me. And it was like when I would have my best game, I would follow it up and get punched in the mouth. And to now, I'm now seeing a little bit of sustained success to start the season. It was very easy to then figure out, it's like, you know what, this is the mindset that I should have had the entire time. And so I would say that it was a combination of finding the cutter and finding a new pitch that was really going to elevate my game, to bridge my fastball and my slider, to now have a new thing to kind of offer at people. And then just having the mindset of, it's like, I've gotten these guys out before, and every time that I go out there on the field, like not just telling myself like, "Hey, you're the best, you got this," but actually like really believing it. And I feel like that's where my game took the next step, was just knowing like, if I just go out there and execute exactly what I know I can do, that's all it takes. I don't have to go out there and be a superhero. I just have to go out there and pitch. And really, like, when I finally figured that out at 26 years old, that to me is like what it was. And so I look back on like 21 and 22, and even though they were egregious numbers, like, I'm super, super thankful that I suffered what hopefully will be the worst baseball of my entire life as early as I did, because it taught me so much about the game and about myself, and just how to like manage when you are going through the lows, like what not to do, what not to think about. And as prevalent as like the mental aspect is nowadays, like being able to take those licks and then still find your way out of it, and to be in the situation that I am today, I feel like has given me all the confidence in the world.
Yeah, it sounds like it was just as much the physical aspect as the mental aspect of it.
Yeah.
Have you reached out to Taj Bradley at all and been like, "Hey, I'm using your grip, man"?
But if I do ever run into him, I'll shake his hand and I'll tell him that.
Well, I have some rapid fire questions I want to get into. I like doing it towards the end of the show, but I did have my second hardest question I'm going to ask you before I dive into those. The hardest question I ask you is fast food related a little bit.
But it is a hard question.
It is a hard question. But before I get into the rapid fire stuff, this one, it's not a hard question, but I I've always liked to know, because I got to chat with a guy who's in the Red Sox system this past year. He was in Worcester. He was a Rule 5 minor league draft pick, so not in the same position as you, but I sat down with him quite a few times. It's Joe Jakes. He's a reliever in the system. He's a great guy, but he was telling me that there was a sense of pressure when he first got to the organization, because he wanted to show that he belonged and that, they picked me for a reason type thing. Is there any sort of pressure on you, just knowing that, like, you have to stick and just, like, you got to, like, give it your best?
No, to be quite honest with you, I think that, yes, there is pressure, obviously, but the pressure for me, I feel like it's exciting, because I know the situation that I'm put in, and in a way, it just feels like I have nothing to lose. Like, to me, it's a win-win. Like, if I go out there and I perform in spring training, I'm going to make a big league roster. And if I don't, it's not going to be the end of the world, because I've seen failures already and I know how to get over it. And so I would say, like, for me, like, yes, it is a little bit different, obviously, because it wasn't the minor league Rule 5, and it's not like they can just keep me in the minor leagues, for a year or whatnot. That there is an expectation to succeed, but at the end of the day, it just goes back to, like, the mental aspect of it. And truthfully, like, I'm not a very, like, cocky person, but I do believe the Red Sox picked me for a reason, and it's because they believe that I can compete at the major league level. And so for me, it's not like a pressure that I have to perform. It's excitement that I get to perform, and I feel like I get to go out there and prove them right. I don't want to like prove other teams wrong. I want to prove the Red Sox right. And I want to make it to where, like, as questionable of a call as it could have been, to some people, and I don't really know how certain people feel about it, but to me, it's just like, it's a super exciting time, because it's like I'm getting to go out there and been given an incredible opportunity to come and play for an incredible organization. And so I feel like, to me, it's like I can't wait to get out to spring training and start performing, because I know that, like I said earlier, all I have to go out there and do is just pitch like I know I can pitch. I don't have to try and be even better than I was last year, because, like, truthfully, like, if I'm just as good as I was last year, that's good enough for them, because they picked me to be in this role. And so I just kind of have that mindset of, like, for me, there's nothing to lose. I'm going to go out there, compete for a spot. I'm going to give it my best. And at the end of the day, like, I'll be able to sleep at night no matter what happens, because I know that I'm, the work that I'm putting in the off season and what I had to do, I'll be able to live with it, because I'm going to give it my best shot. And so that's just kind of how I'm thinking about it right now.
I feel like that's the only way to look at it. I feel like that's an incredible answer. So
That's money, baby.
Yeah. All right. We're going to get into some rapid fire. I got 5 questions for you. They're off the wall, very random.
Okay.
First question. What is a guilty pleasure of Justin Slaten?
Honestly, one of them would have to be, like, Megan Thee Stallion and, like, Cardi B. Like, right before I'm going into a workout, my guilty pleasure would just be, like,
Houston's very own.
Just to kind of get the rhythm down, try and get my body going a little bit. So, like, I would never put that on if I was boxing at, like, a party or something like that. But a little bit of a guilty pleasure is, like, right before I go to work out, I like to listen to a little Doja Cat, Cardi B, Megan Thee Stallion, something like that.
It's incredible. I love that. That's the first music related one we've gotten. So that's good. All right. Second question. You were just at Fenway for development camp. You were hanging around another new pitcher in the system that has quite the incredible facial hair situation going on. So I want to know, in your opinion, does Isaiah Campbell have one of the best mustaches you've ever seen in person?
I think, truthfully, I don't think he really put much time into it. Like, obviously, like, we're just going into the field. It looked like one of those things, like, he just rolls out of bed and it's incredible. But there was a point in time where I'm like, if he wants to make this look as good as he can, I mean, get it like a nice curl, all of that good stuff, he absolutely has the capability to do that. I don't think he was trying to show it off. It's like, all that right then. I think he was being like pretty modest about it. But yes, I was able to take a good close look at it, and I'm just okay. Look, like it's gonna take you like 5 minutes in the morning to do it, and I know that he will when the time comes. But yes, it is incredible.
Okay, I had to ask because I've seen it in photos, and I'm like, man, like I saw he was rocking one in the pictures from Fenway. I'm like, I feel like it might not be in midseason form yet, but it's I feel like it's probably pretty incredible.
It's like that and the goggles are pretty. It's just a great combination.
Great look. It's a great look.
All right, third question here. I need. So you went to the University of New Mexico. I feel like 9 out of 10 people, maybe even 10 out of 10 people you would ever run into in the Northeast have probably never stepped foot in New Mexico. I haven't.
I've been there.
Okay, Ed has. See, 9 out of 10 people. All right, whatever.
Albuquerque isotopes, baby.
That's right.
All right, so 9 out of 10 people probably never been in New Mexico before. I need you to give me a weird / fun fact about the University of New Mexico that people don't know.
That's a good one. A weird / fun fact about the university itself. I would say if I could branch out like a little bit away from just the university itself, but go more towards like Albuquerque kind of as a whole. I would say like the most fun fact for me being there is there's a mountain range called the Sandia Mountains that run pretty much like right next to the city. And I guess for me, because like I'm a little bit of a nerd and it is cool, but like if you go and look at pictures of it, it kind of has like this cherry red color. Like when the sun is setting, it is like it's like a cherry color, and then the mountains itself looks silver. And so that's where the University of New Mexico gets their colors of the cherry and silver is from that mountain range when the sun is setting up against the mountain. So
that's incredible.
That's what it's for.
That was the best fun fact, or like, I mean, because I would have never known that. I would have never Googled that either. So that's, I feel like that was the best one we've gotten.
Yeah. The sunsets out west are unbelievable.
Yeah, they are. It really is beautiful. Like when we're playing like an evening game there and the sun is setting and you're just in the dugout, there are times where you just be looking out there and you'll miss 2 or 3 pitches because you're just staring out there. I mean, it is getting to play there was awesome.
All right, question number 4 here. I had a question and then it kind of got ruined because I did just look and you've played in Spokane, Washington. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize the Rangers had a minor league affiliate up in the state of Washington. That is far away from the big league club, but all right. So my question is, you just experienced a little bit of cold, actually very cold, when you were out in Springfield at Fenway. Just know opening day at Fenway Park will be pretty chilly. It always is. So what is a thing that you're going to have to adjust to play in the cold that you're going to have in Boston in April?
Listen, I'm not going to have to adjust to the cold one bit. I actually really like the cold, and 2, it absolutely cannot get much worse than a February game in Albuquerque when it is 30 degrees with about 70-mile-an-hour winds, and it's like a piercing wind too. Like it's the type of wind that cuts through your entire body. I mean, I remember there would be days walking to class in the morning, and it's like 15 degrees. 60-mile-an-hour winds. I've got on like 2 hoodies and a big jacket and gloves and sweatpants, and I'm not proud of it, but there were mornings where I would get out of my house and I'd get about 100 yards and I'm like, I'm not going to class today. I simply cannot walk in this. It is a 20-minute walk. I'm not going to make it. So I did have to pitch in some pretty extreme conditions at New Mexico. I think that I honestly, truthfully, even being from Texas, I honestly really like the cold. I would say I'm more of a cold weather person. I feel like I can handle pitching in cold weather much more than I like being out there in the middle of July in Frisco when it's 108 degrees and it's like suffocating hot. So I honestly am kind of looking forward to being able in a little bit cooler weather.
I didn't know it got that cold in New Mexico.
Freezing.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the like February, middle February when the season starts, early March, it is absolutely freezing there.
The more you know, man. I grew up in the Midwest, so it was like, it was cold, but like I didn't realize it was cold down there. That's the more you know, man. All right. I got one last question. It's the most important, and then we'll let you go because you've given us a ton of time. But all right, you're a man of the South, so I have a lot of faith in you that you're gonna get this one correct. So, all right, Justin, you're hungry for some lunch, and you want fast food today, and specifically, you want fried chicken, and it's got to have a drive-through, and every single option is available that you've ever had in your life. Like every single chicken place is all spread out, and you're like, I got to go to one of these. Where are you going?
All right. I hope that you're familiar with this answer, but I will stick with this till the day that I die. The best chicken spot that you can go to in the South is Chicken Express.
Ooh, the Hunter Dobbins
Fair.
choice.
Yes, that's fair.
Hands down. When you go in, you can go in there and you get a nice little 5-tender meal with their mashed potatoes and gravy. And then they have this thing called serendipity seasoning. It's like a little bit of it's spicy. And here's how I like to do it. I'll take the serendipity, dump that in like the mashed potatoes and gravy and kind of mix it up. And then I will take like a little spoonful of the mashed potato and gravy and put that on the chicken tender and eat it like that.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it doesn't get much better than that. We don't have I really don't think we have a KFC like where here. I know we have a Church's, but it's kind of like on the far side of town, so I don't go over there very much. But anytime that I'm gonna go for chicken, I'm gonna go to one either Chick-fil-A or I'm gonna go to Chicken Express.
I can't knock you for Chicken Express. That's a very Texas thing. We had Hunter Dobbins on who's in the system, and he was singing. Actually, his quote, he said, their sweet tea could put a non-diabetic into a diabetic coma.
Yes, that is something you have to be very careful about. So it's like when I go there, I have to get half and half because even their half and half is like you'll take a sip of it and you're just like, good Lord. What if you don't like treat and like really like in the like when I think of like the South, like some of the best sweet tea that I've ever had, there was an old lady that lived down the road from me when I was a kid, and shout out Miss Ethel for this, but we would always be outside playing, me and my friends, and she would come out the front door with like sometimes like she would have sweet tea. And it was like the sweetest. As a kid, it was like, oh, we've been playing out here all day, and then you sip on that, and it's like you're good for another couple hours. So growing up, like it's some place where it's like very, very particular the tea here, and so yeah, like Chicken Express is definitely like someone who is like, oh, if you live like up north, Midwest, Northeast, something like that, it's like, yeah, I want some sweet tea, and you took a sip of some Chicken Express sweet tea, you might confuse it for like jet engine or jet fuel. Sorry, it is a different brand.
All right. I mean, the correct answer was Zaxby's to this question, but I'm going to let Chicken Express pass.
It's not a correct answer if only 3 people have picked it.
Fine.
So I've only had Zaxby's like a handful of times, and it was when I played in North Carolina. We don't have a Zaxby's where I'm from, actually, so I didn't grow up on it.
Fair. I think it's I think they got some in Austin and College Station, a few other college towns, but
I'm gonna be in Austin in like a month, so I'm gonna have to check it out when I'm there. I've got to try that out. I've got to try the Chicken Express while I'm there.
Yeah.
Chicken Express, definitely. Just be careful on the sweet tea. Said it's gonna be jet fuel, so
yeah.
I like jet fuel. That's neat.
Well, Justin, you've given us an hour of your time tonight. We appreciate that. Time flew by, but thank you so much for hopping on with us.
Yeah, no, thank you guys for having me. It's a pleasure meeting y'all.